Hello and welcome back to the show. It's Christine Jewell, and I'm excited about today's conversation. We are just coming off of a run of back to back events since Mark and I got back from Italy. We have run events from 70 people, 45 people, 6 people, an intimate VIP weekend. And here's the thing is I was tuning into like what to share on today's podcast. So many things are fresh, but what is most fresh is having observed really, over 150 people in the last month who have been in the work at some level, some of them just starting out, some of them having worked with us, our company, our teams for years, some of them coaching intimately with me for years. What are the things that have created the greatest shifts, the greatest momentum in the lives of the men and women? In their marriages, right? In their health, in their careers, just in the whole life that they're living. And so today I want to talk about the stories that we tell ourselves, our emotional home, our set point, because our set point is like the floor that we build everything else on. So I'm going to get right to the point. The one thing that I have seen that has created the greatest momentum, the greatest shift, the greatest change, the greatest transformation across the board, meaning your marriage is different, your health is different, right? Positions that maybe you're operating in inside of the company, your role, your financial increase, the way the teams around you are showing up. There's a couple things, and I want to just share a couple of them. Number one is being aware, decisiveness, that something has to change, being in full decision that effective immediately, you're no longer tolerating what you've always tolerated. Everything changes the moment you decide it does. And I'm going to unpack this. So number one is getting to that place of decisiveness. Decisiveness is a superpower. Number two is recognizing what is the familiar emotional home, meaning when we are just unconscious, right? We're just going through the motions. We all have a default. We all have a floor that we fall to, or, we settle into, that our operating systems run from. You need to be aware of what your emotional home base is. And what I say about emotional, your default operating system, is because emotions at the core drive everything that really we make decisions around, right? We're always trying to either feel better about something or avoid feeling pain around something. The third thing there is really understanding where these programs come from. What are the mental operating systems so that you can change them, right? Because your thoughts drive every emotion, they drive the actions, they drive the result. And some of us are just on the hamster wheel, and some people are just getting changed. So it's like when you understand where these things got planted in you, these operating systems got planted on you, you can begin to rewrite the story. So let's unpack that a little bit. So, number one, I talked about decisiveness. What I see time and time again is people reaching out. And I will tell you that I ask people, what have you tried? Do you truly feel like you have exhausted all other resources? Are you at the place where something must change? Something must change. Here's the thing. Something either happens to us, right? Or in us that ignites a catalyst for change. And sometimes we're wanting to up level our marriage. We want more intimacy. We want more connection. I keep talking about marriage because relationships really are the foundation that we build so much of our life on. They're the things that fuel us and energize us and inspire us and give us passion and heart and drive. When we're excited about our relationship, our marriage, what we're coming home to, who's standing by our side, who's rowing on the ship with us, in our business, we just have so much more capacity. We have so much more bandwidth available to us. When our relationships are draining, they're misaligned, they're full of friction. You're trying to row forward and you got 10 people, 50 people rowing in the opposite direction, maybe 2 people in your marriage. If you are both rowing in your own independent directions, it's very difficult to experience any level of harmony, right? So when people reach out and I say, what have you tried? Where are you guys at? We do the discovery, right? The discovery is what happens after people have just been going through the motions. They've just been saying, well, it is the way it is. I can't really change it. Finally, something begins to happen that starts pulling you to say, you know what, something's got to change. Something's got to be different. And we start going and we start digging to get the discovery to go, what is no longer okay with you? Like, are you at the place where you have said enough is enough? Enough of this disconnection, enough of this miscommunication, enough of this division, enough of this confusion, right? Hiding, just gossiping, right? Not being direct around conversation. Enough of this atmosphere that is one of tension, right? Where people walk on eggshells. When you get to the point where you say enough is enough, and we draw that line in the sand, there's that definitive moment where you make a decision. You make a decision to burn the boats, that effective immediately. I'm not going to go back. We're not going to repeat the past. We are going to create a new future. We're going to forge a new path forward. We're going to do this differently than we've always done it. I have no idea what that looks like. Maybe I have no idea how to do it, but I know that I know that I know that we are not continuing the way we have been, and it gets to look different going forward. That level of decisiveness is like you just cut off all other options. You eliminate all other distractions. You stop entertaining the past. You start getting clear about the future, right? We are redirecting our energy, our focus, our attention on looking ahead at what we do want, what we do want to create, what that gets to look like, what that gets to sound like. And we say no to everything else. This is a moment of power. The moment of decision is the moment of power, because now we get to go, okay, this is what it gets to be. And I want to say, this is, you guys have heard me say this on the podcast so many times. This is not selecting. This is not hoping. Well, I hope it gets to look different. I hope that they buy in. I hope. It's like, this is happening. It is already done, right? Mentally, it's already done. Emotionally, you feel it. You could feel what that looks like. You could feel what that feeling is that you want to create. You may not have it all figured out. You won't have it figured out in the physical, but you're ready to get to work. So decisiveness is a superpower. Everything changes the moment you decide it does. And may I suggest that if things have not changed around you, if your teams haven't evolved, if your marriage is still the same, if you're reliving the same situations over and over again, you have never really been an all in kind of decisiveness that effective immediately. I've said it like 5 times now. I want to like plant this chip in you. It gets to be different. I am no longer available for what was in the past. I'm going to be a conduit, a vessel to create something different. And I have a responsibility, because once you have awareness, you have responsibility. There we go. There's my lover calling. One, when we have awareness, we have responsibility. So let's go into the second thing. Once we have that decisiveness, the other piece is also getting clear on what has been my familiar emotional home and what do I want it to be. Because remember that 95% of what we do, what we think about, the motions that we go through, they're automatic. We repeat what we remember. It's like the stuff that's just running in the background. It's like the operating system that's just running in the background. We're going through the motions. I've used this example a lot, but have you ever been driving the car and before you know it, you're like, you end up, I've been driving before and I've ended up in the Starbucks drive-through. I remember this vividly from years ago. And I was literally going like, how did I get here? I wasn't even thinking about coffee consciously. I wasn't planning on going here, but there I was in the drive-through and the lady's like, hello, can I take your order? And I was totally mindless, just going through the motions. And I had driven that path for so long and I had pulled into that parking lot and gone through that drive-through in that order so many times that it was just like it was running in the background and I was totally thinking about something else, right? So when I'm using a very simple, a very basic example um, of how that works. So when we're talking about unconsciously, what is going on in our subconscious. That's like what's happening in your body, what's happening in your nervous system, right? Your body's just like it's remembering what's familiar and it loves to repeat what's familiar. So does our minds when we're unaware, we're unconscious. It's just repeating the past thoughts, the past programs, the past beliefs. And same thing with everything, right? Our actions. And we also have familiar feelings, familiar emotional home bases that we hang out in. I talk a lot about this as well. For some of us, it's frustration, right? We just love to hang out in the pool of frustration. Some of us love to hang out in the pool of chaos. It's just like it's in us. Why is it in us? Because we've been there so many times. And a lot of this goes back to your origin story, meaning what was it like the first 7 years when you were growing up, right? What was your home environment like? If it was chaotic, tendency is we have like an addiction to chaos, a normalized chaos that's always running, that we need to have as a set point. So if things are calm, if there is not chaos, if there's not a lot of disruption, we actually think that there's something wrong. I'm using this example because this has been my example, and it's one that I see a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders that are type A personalities that are going. So we get to normalize something new, calm, order, structure, right? Patience, um, a different pace. So where am I going with this? Recognizing once you make that decision, and you've got to give yourself contrast of when I'm unaware, right? Now that you're aware, meaning your light bulb has gone off, you've decided to do something different. Where do I tend to find myself by default, right? What is the default place that I land? Is it disappointed? Is it discouraged? Is it kind of neutral? Are you open? Are you curious? Like, where has it been in the past? And what do you want it to be? What does the future thing that you desire? If you're looking for greater collaboration in your team, you're looking for more partnership in your marriage, you're looking for a family and environment where people can actually have different opinions, right? Talk to each other without being offended or terrified of getting shut down or gaslight, whatever, right? Gaslit. What are we normalizing? Obviously, in the past, we created an environment that was unsafe, right? Where it was threatening to have different opinions. What we want to create, what we get to normalize as a new emotional home is safety, right? Maybe it's emotional safety. Maybe it's openness or curiosity. And the reason why I'm harping on this so much is that if we say, I want effective immediately, I'm going to have a great marriage, we're going to have great communication. And then all of a sudden we go forward and your spouse brings something up that you disagree with and it's not the way you see things, you're going to notice and observe that in your body, your visceral body, right? Your heart might be racing. You might start sweating. You might start feeling your heart get closed and be like, oh, and you've got all these stories rushing through your head of like, she doesn't respect me. She doesn't listen to anything I say. See, we're not on the same page. And there's this cascade of thoughts. And in that moment, you get to make a split decision again. Will I normalize curiosity? Will I lean in to the new emotional home, the new home base? Think of this as a new floor to start building off of that I want to have in my marriage, in my teams, at our dinner table, wherever it is. Or is it going to be me defaulting back and letting the old software, the old operating system run the show right now, which throws me back into reactive, unconscious programming, right? You might be aware that you're in it, but if you don't make a conscious decision to shift and start operating in the new way, you are now opting in to repeating the past. You're opting in to rehashing the story. You're opting in to being on the hamster wheel. And I'll tell you, like, nothing sucks worse than having awareness of something and knowing that you're choosing to stay where you were. I'm going to say that again. Nothing sucks worse. That is the definition of suffering to me, is having seen the light, having the awareness of what's possible for you, for your teams, for your marriage, and then being there and just continuing to settle, continuing to go back to the old ways, because now you're aware that you're choosing the suboptimal, that you're settling, that you're going backwards instead of forwards. So number one, decisiveness, making that line in the sand moment. Number two is recognizing what was your familiar emotional home. If you're not sure, just ask the people around you. If you like a different piece of language around this, what has been your state, right? And if you have some self awareness, you can be radically honest with yourself. You can recognize, right? Oh, I tend to get frustrated, or anger is my baseline. I tend to be angry about a lot of things, dissatisfied. Is it joyful? Are you open? Are you excited? What is it? Ask your spouse, ask your kids, ask the people that you lead. Where do you see my state most of the time? Help them give you a gauge, because leadership is reflection, right? People are always reflecting back to us. Um, our leadership, right? We're always leading people. Are we leading into greater clarity? Are we leading into greater certainty? Are we leading forward, or are we leading them into confusion and exhaustion? And are we leading them backwards into the past? Regardless, you're always leading, you're always influencing. Okay. So know what it was, and know what your new floor, your new home base gets to be. And I want to say this: when we are choosing this, the third thing around this, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an exercise, is to also recognize, like, where in my life did that become my familiar home base. I don't want to spend too much time in the past, but it can be really hard to go forward and try to create a new marriage, a new, team structure, whatever, and just do it by willpower. It's almost impossible. And in fact, last weekend when we were out in Palm Desert, we were having our women's VIP weekend. And one of the ladies that came, at the beginning, we all set intentions. What did you come here for? What makes this a successful event? One of the ladies was really wanting to work on her marriage. She was coming for strategies, communication strategies, ways that she could improve her marriage. She was really focused on, what can I do for him, and what can I do for us? And, how do we start leading better together? That's what she wanted. And what she learned throughout the weekend, what she got away with, was, wow, I get to like go back and just really work on my relationship with my father, right? With my relationship with just playing and being happy. Because she realized as she went back that her emotional home base of just being serious, not able to really enjoy the time maybe with her kids or with her husband, she had like a protective layer on. And as much as she wanted to have joy and she wanted to laugh and play and all of those things with the kids and have that with the husband, there was like a wall that was preventing her from getting there. What is that wall? As we went back and we said, where did this seriousness start coming from? When did it start showing up in your life? And the awareness that, wow, I didn't really play and laugh a lot as a child, right? I walked on eggshells. There was a lot of anger in my atmosphere. And so we self-protect. And so again, it's not to go back and just relive those stories, but it's to be aware of where we adopted the program. And then whatever, was missing. So I'm going to use her example in this instance. We just invited her to, just connect to that little girl, to be playful. Even when she's out playing with the boys, it's not just about a mom playing with the boys or the girls. It's like, can I connect to my inner child and hang out with my kids? Can I connect to that lover inside and connect to my husband, and not have to be the wife that has it all together, the one that's responsible in the household, but am I able to really go back and rewrite this story? And so I'm giving you a very short synopsis. I mean, we worked on this for 3 days, rewriting the stories of our past, getting into decisiveness. But she realized, like, I can't work on my marriage until I realize that I work on being playful, connecting to that child inside, like just childlike wonder again. And for those of you who are faith-based, who are in prayer, this is the heart, is learning to be a child of God, hanging out with our spiritual father, knowing that he wants to lavish on you. He delights in seeing you playful and joyful and laughing. And the part of us that's adopted this persona that we always need to be doing, and we always need to be pushing, and we always need to be striving, or else we're unworthy. you know, there's a time, obviously, for work. There's a time for meaningful work. And you can do meaningful work with the heart of a child that is playful, that is got curiosity and wonder, that's innovative, creative. You can start to expand your range. Um, You can be really focused and also really playful at the same time. You can be both. So, just to kind of close the loop on this, the people that I've seen shift and really create different realities, they do not entertain the stories of the past over and over and over again. Something in them hits a critical moment, a tipping point. Something happens to them, right? Something from the outside. Unfortunately, somebody comes home and says, I'm leaving. The position at work is no longer available. The company collapses, whatever it is, something happens externally, or there's a catalyst on the inside. There's a desire, there's a longing, there's an unsettling, there's an unrest that starts saying, it's time for change. And as Brian and I spoke on in the last episode, if you get to that place where you can feel something inside stirring, you can break it down and say yes to the new future. You can make adjustments before you have the total breakdown. But if we don't break it down and we don't move on that awareness that we have that something has to change, we'll often find ourselves repeating the past, recycling the past until something happens to us to force us to create the change. So when you get to that place, the people that I've seen create the greatest change, they really get to that place of full on decisiveness, effective immediately. It gets to look different. And I'm all in on what that gets to look like. I'm all in on figuring it out. I'm all in on going forward, but we are definitely not going backwards. They are also highly aware of their default, right? Because remember, 95% of what we do is on autopilot. It's you repeat what you remember. So every time you have awareness that you're dropping into the old place, or you catch yourself, or you give your spouse permission to say, you know what, when I go there, just lovingly, okay, just remind me, hey, babe, like we don't live there anymore, right? We live over here. We do it different now. Once we have that awareness, now we have a conscious decision to make a different choice, to take a different action, to ask a better question. And by the way, guys, these are tactical things. It's slowing down. It's paying attention. It's being present. It's being humble enough and vulnerable to tell people where you're going, what you want to create, and also to be giving people permission to call you up when they see you defaulting, right? That's why it's so important to have mentorship, coaches around you, people who will call you up, right? Who can reflect back the things that you are blind to, your blind spots, the things that you can't see. I was getting my hair done this morning, and the woman has been working, my hairdresser has been working just on changing the atmosphere in her home because she has suffered from anxiety for years and years. And she was saying, Christine, I don't know, my boys, they're so anxious. They can't sleep well. They're always nervous about this, nervous about school. And looking at her, it's like, yes, of course, because energy doesn't lie, right? Like if it's in the air and this is the norm that you and your husband are putting into the atmosphere, of course, they're like sponges. They're saturating it. They're just soaking it in. So you're telling them not to worry, don't worry, don't worry, but like anxiety is oozing out of you. And she's like, what do I do? And I said, you start being present. You start training yourself to come back into your body. Notice her familiar place was she was leaving her body and going all up into everybody else's. I wonder what he's thinking. I hope the kids are okay. I hope tomorrow. She was time traveling in the future, in the past, in her kid's head, in her husband's head. And it's like she was absent from her body, not present. No wonder her body was freaking out. So I actually told her, like, just practice coming back. When you start to notice anxious, you're observing your kids anxious, instead of fixating on, oh my gosh, how do I calm them down? Start focusing on your heart rate. Just see if you can tap in. Can you notice your heartbeat? Can you begin to slow down your heartbeat? Can you notice your breath? Can you slow down your breath? Can you notice your hands and your feet? And can you come back inside of your body? And as you start to calm yourself down, we often notice that the environment around us begins to change. And so that anxious child also begins to change. Man, I saw this in the airport as well. We were coming through security, and this mother was like, God bless her, but she was just agitated and anxious. And she was so worried about her daughter not being worried that she was creating so much chaos for both of them. They were dropping things. They were both shaking. And my heart goes out to her, but she was like creating so much of the anxiety in the child. And she thought she was protecting the child. She thought she was keeping the child close to her. Everything starts at home, in our heart, in our emotional home base, in our body language, in the energy that we bring to the situation, in the tone of our words. And we can shift the atmosphere pretty quickly. So, you guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. But I want to ask you today, and we're going to keep it short. Is there an area in your life where you have been recycling the past? Maybe it is on your teams. Maybe it's in your business. Maybe it's in your marriage. I don't know. And I talk holistically because I work holistically with clients. When I work with my leadership teams, when I work with one-on-one clients, when I work with groups, you know, even though the external situations are the same, it's often a lot of the same core issues. It starts with self mastery, self leadership, looking at ourselves. How am I showing up? Am I actually all in? Am I fully committed? Have I made the decision to go forward that something changes? Am I creating self awareness? And when I have awareness, am I consciously choosing new actions forward? Because as you get new actions, you'll have new results, and new results create new experiences in your nervous system. And before you know it, you're normalizing. You have a new base, you have a new baseline, you have a new set point, you have a new emotional home. This is something, the story framework, we teach this at our Thriving Leader events. But it's a loop, right? It's a cognitive behavioral loop. So I hope that this was helpful. I want to remind you guys that if you want to change the story inside of your marriage, business, health, whatever, you've got to change the stories you tell yourself about the past. I'm going to say that again. If you want to change your story going forward, you've got to change the stories you tell yourself about your marriage, about your business, about the people on your team. As you begin to change the stories and you raise the set point, your new home base, and you make a decision to go all in, the pieces will start to come together. If you guys are looking for support in the next step, Christine, this sounds amazing. How do I actually live this out? What does it look like? This is why we get coaching. This is why we get mentorship. This is why we get in groups, we get in rooms with people that raise the bar, right? That elevate our game, that elevate our thinking, that elevate what's possible for us. I invite you to reach out to learn about one of our coaching circles. Coaching groups, whether you're a leader and you're just starting out, we have a Thriving Leader program for you. If you're an executive and you are at the top and you're like, man, I just need a person in my corner, somebody to talk to, I got you. So fill out the link below, connect with us. Remember to get the support, the structure around you so that you will continue to rise into the next level of life and leadership that God has for you. Bye for now.